Good evening, I'm Dacia with Wednesday's edition of the Regional News. We bear with news from Peru. A Peruvian court on Tuesday sentenced ex-President Ollanta Humala to 50 years in prison for receiving illicit campaign funds from a Brazilian construction firm, making him the nation's latest former leader to head behind bars. Humala and his wife are accused of receiving funds from Brazilian builder known as Novonor in his successful 2011 election campaign. Humala's wife Nadine was also sentenced to 15 years in prison on Tuesday. Peru's foreign ministry said that following the verdict, Nadine entered the Brazilian embassy in Lima to request asylum. In talks with the Peruvian government, Brazil is negotiating a safe conduct path that would allow Nadine to leave Peru and travel to Brazil, a Brazilian government source said. The source declined to be named as the ongoing talks are confidential. Humala, a retired military officer who led the Andes nation from 2011 to 2016, will likely carry out his sentence on a police base built specially to house Peru's jailed leaders. During his trial, which lasted 3 years after an investigation which kicked off in 2016, Humala decried the charges as political persecution. Prosecutors alleged Humala received the illicit funds in his 2011 campaign against Keiko Fujimori through Humala's Nationalist Party. His imprisonment will be effective immediately, even if he appeals the conviction. The court is expected to continue reading out the full sentencing over the next several days. Humala's lawyer called the sentence excessive, saying prosecutors failed to prove the illegal origin of the funds. He said the defense plans to appeal once the final ruling is issued on April 29. Humala is Peru's second former president to be jailed and the fourth to be implicated for his role in the sweeping graft known as Lava Jato. In 2019, former President Alan Garcia killed himself by gunshot wound as police descended on his home to arrest him for alleged corruption related to the firm. Meanwhile, Toledo was sentenced to 2 decades in prison last year after receiving $35 million in bribes in exchange for public work contracts. While in Ecuador, support for Ecuadorian leftist Luisa Gonzalez's call for a recount in the country's presidential election was dwindling on Monday as a growing number of prominent members of her party said President Daniel Noboa had secured a full term in Sunday's vote. Noboa's support was holding at 55.6%, the level at which it remained for nearly the entire count. Gonzalez has 44.4% support. Noboa and electoral authorities said on Sunday he had won the contest leading by more than 1 million votes in a surprising sweep after a tight February 1st round when he finished ahead by just over 16,700 votes. Gonzalez told supporters on Sunday she did not accept the results, which she called grotesque fraud, and she would demand a recount. She offered no evidence of fraud, nor did she immediately call for protests. Gonzalez had not appeared publicly on Monday as of late afternoon. Candidates can contest results under some conditions after the official count closes. As of late afternoon on Monday, less than 1% of ballot boxes remained to be counted and only 0.81% registered some kind of irregularity. Influential RC members individually recognized Noboa's victory. Noboa's win was consistent with what Organization of American States officials observed during voting. Luis Almagro, its Secretary General, said. Finally, the push for slavery reparations is at a defining moment, a Caribbean community official said on the second day of a United Nations forum, adding it was time to step up actions to hold former colonial powers to account for past wrongs. Calls for reparations are long-standing but have been gaining momentum worldwide, particularly among the CARICOM and the African Union. Backlash against it has also been growing. CARICOM has a reparations plan which, among other demands, calls for technology transfers and investments to tackle health crises and illiteracy. The AU is developing its own plan. CARICOM and the AU have in recent years joined forces in the fight for reparations, and Hillary Brown said that partnership put the movement at a defining moment as they can use one voice to demand action. Brown said together they could advance the reparations agenda at the UN and other intergovernmental bodies, co-sponsor a joint UN resolution on reparations, and advocate for a high-level political forum on the issue. Many of Europe's leaders have opposed even talking about reparations. At least 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped forcibly, transported by European ships, and sold into slavery from the 15th to the 19th centuries. Opponents of reparations argue, among other things, that contemporary states and institutions should not be held responsible for their past. But advocates say action is needed to address the legacies, such as systemic and structural racism, and say that contemporary states still benefit from the wealth generated by hundreds of years of exploitation. Thank you for watching. Do have a great rest of the week. Until next time.